We are Crowdcreate, and we're here interviewing the co-founder of Super 73, Michael. You may have heard of Super 73 bikes because you've seen celebrities like Will Smith riding around on these, and also they have some top-notch investors like Tiger Global and Volition Capital invested in their company.
We're going to unpack some of the secrets and tips around how he's connected with these influencers and built a community around Super 73. Thanks, Michael, for having us.
Happy. Thanks for taking time to chat with me. I'm excited to get into it.
The Kickstarter was kind of the beginning of Super 73.
Yeah, it was the original birth of our company, and what a lot of people don't see is that birth was kind of built on the ashes of about a dozen other companies that hadn't quite worked out. And earlier as we were setting up, you mentioned, like, was this your first Kickstarter campaign? And this unfortunately was not. There was a good bit of failure and half failure. I think half failure hurts more because you're like, it's almost there. We would raise just enough money and then we'd fulfill the project, and then there'd be no more money to continue with future projects. And so it's kind of this cycle, and we thought, hey, let's just become like a Kickstarter factory where we build a really cool product, do a campaign, launch it, complete it, move on to the next. And that was how we were going to pay for our bills. And a couple of us were living out of the warehouse at the time, and it was pretty dire. We were very committed to this idea that we could build something. We had the resources, we had the place, we just needed to figure out what the product was. And we kept finding right product, wrong time, wrong product, right? It was just a cycle of like, it sort of almost clicks, but it doesn't quite click. And then we electrified a mini bike. And that was kind of the moment of coming into consciousness, like kind of waking up and saying, wait, this might actually be something. So we did what we did with all of our campaigns, and we put it on Kickstarter and said, let's just sell 12 to 25. We'll aim for 25. That's our max capacity. We cannot build more than 25. Along that process, we met a battery and motor supplier. His name was Legrand. And he goes, what are you guys working on? And we hesitantly showed him, and he goes, you need my help. And we were like, well, yeah, definitely. And he's like, you need so much of my help, I'm going to shutter my business in Nevada. I'm going to hop in my RV and I'll park outside your warehouse until we get this thing finished. Legrand was the one that went overseas and sourced the parts for us. He kind of came out of nowhere. We had the idea, and it was a cool idea, to take an old 70s style mini bike, kind of blow it up a little bit, put it on big wheels and electrify it. It had that bit of California nostalgia. And we had the idea, but we didn't understand the tech. And Legrand came in and really understood the tech, so much so that within a couple months we were like, come on board as a co-founder. This company, you are vital to our success. And so it was really cool to see him join just based on the momentum of our idea. We launched a Kickstarter, and we sold about 400 bikes in a month, and that was
incredible.
It was an accident. Thank you. It was a total accident because I was like, let's just film this bike the way I would want to see a piece of content. I had done a bunch of videos on Vine. I had kind of developed a little bit of a following there. I had good friends that were YouTubers, so they were like, listen, create something that you want to see. Don't worry about anything else. Like, you don't need to sell it like a Kickstarter campaign, because at the time, all Kickstarter campaigns were dude in front of a white wall saying, this is going to revolutionize the future of our industry. And there was no revolutionizing to be done. In fact, we were going to take it back about 40 years and put it on a vintage style frame. So for us,
let's talk about that actually, because I've heard the story, but at the time, that style and making that electrified bike in that format wasn't really popular. Everyone was chasing something completely different, and you had the insights and thought to, hey, let's almost turn it around and go at a different angle.
There's a million and one of us out there right now doing kind of the vintage style bikes, but at the time there really weren't many players. There was a pedal bike company that was doing some cool kind of retro style things. Vintage Electric has these old, very elongated cafe racer styled bikes, but nobody had that like American muscle of e-bike. Everybody was focused on performance, lightweight, downhill mountain biking. That was a big trend at the time. So we were like, let's cater to somebody who would never normally ride an e-bike. And that was kind of our mantra for the first couple of years. Is we learned very quickly we do not attract traditional cyclists. And we were laughed out of a lot of the bike shops that I took bikes into. They were very rude to us online. And we were like, all right, I think we're onto something, because if they hate it, there's an entire market of people out here that we can capture. And that's what we did. We said, millennials, what's up? And we got the millennials. And then we started realizing that people, who like to motocross and dirt bike loved our bikes as well. So we kind of dipped our toe more into the performance side of the pool and realized motorcycle enthusiasts are stoked on this. So we can kind of divert our focus away from cycling, get more into the motorcycle world, and that's kind of how Super 73 was born, from this weird American sort of muscle but ingenuity. It was a weird hybrid that hadn't been done before.
How did you know that design and concept was going to be a hit?
If you had checked the early comments on our Kickstarter, it was very clear it wasn't going to be. I think the campaign was up for about 2 weeks and there was almost no interest on it.
Wow.
And we were like, oh, okay, so maybe we have another flop. And then overnight, a company called Uncrate, I believe it was, wrote an article. And
how did you get that article post? Because I know exactly when that happened.
It was a mutual of a mutual, I believe, that was like, oh, I'll take a look at an article, send it over. So we kind of like wrote up the rough draft of it, sent some photos over in an email, kind of didn't expect to see anything because this has happened a couple times. And then the next morning we're on Uncrate, and then we're on Design Boom, and we're on Gizmag, and we're on Hypebeast. And it was like, whoa, okay, it's working. And that was the initial, like, this is going to be a millennials bike. And that was cool because no millennials are riding motorcycles and even fewer are cycling. And so we were like, we just tapped into a little bit of magic, and that kind of allowed us to go full steam ahead in this direction because we got that validation from the big websites.
And did that translate over to, let's say, Kickstarter contributions? Did the community just like...
Yes, overnight. I was just, and we all had notifications on our phone because it was so fun watching the orders fly in. And it was weird because we were all, I very much dressed the way I dressed 5 years ago. We were all run down and ragged. We were all like, my business partner, Aaron, would wake up in the morning and do yoga right outside of the warehouse in the middle of a business center. We'd be eating bowls of cereal, like watching people pull into their office jobs. And so it was very funny to see like this number starting to generate and being like, oh, I think we're an actual business. I think this is happening. But we're still kind of in the lifestyle of like being broke, because that's just the honest truth. Is for the first 3 years, we looked like a very successful company, but there was only about a half a dozen of us. And so we were doing everything we could. Aaron and I were assembling all the bikes. And it was really kind of about pulling it together and saying, this is going to be a sacrifice we all make. And that allowed us to kind of find that success.
So we mentioned that you truly are living the entrepreneur's dream to take a product idea and create this, and hats off to you for your success. Do you have any tips for first time?
Yeah, absolutely.
Product?
The truth is, I think so many kids these days, they get the Gary Vee energy and they're like so amped, and they get out there and they run and they hit one wall and they're like, oh, okay, so the universe hates me. I get it. All right, so everything's up against me. And they're very quick to play the game of like, I tried, it didn't work. I'll tell you, I tried Super 73 for 3 years before it actually worked. There were a lot of days that we were like one day away from running out of money, one day away from not having inventory to meet demands. And it's about overcoming these obstacles, and I've kind of adopted this sort of saying of like the old saying of the winner is the one who doesn't quit, and that's kind of the truth. This race has no finish line. An entrepreneur's race truly has no finish line, and that's kind of a little bit of a bummer if you think about it in that way. But it's also like, if this is the life you want to take on, you're never going to stop running. You always have to run. I'm sitting here 5 years into the company, and I'm still at a full sprint. And I look around at my friends who got the traditional jobs and they're settled down and they've got 2 kids. And there's a part of me, and I know fellow entrepreneurs are going to understand this, that's like, that's not me. I'm gonna create a legacy. And there's another equal part of me that's like, that seems really nice. That seems like maybe I shouldn't maybe I shouldn't have missed that moment in my life. So it's always going to be a struggle between just becoming complacent and comfortable and pushing yourself to the next step. And I think a lot of people, after they meet that first barrier of resistance, they're like, I think I'm okay to be complacent. And that's fine. If that's what you want, then that's fine. But a true entrepreneur, somebody who I think wants to build legacies and wants to build multiple businesses, there's no finish line. You have to keep running. And the minute there is a finish line at one business, it's just the starting point of another. And that's what I've really recently learned. And it's very exhausting to think about, but also very rewarding.
Where does your resilience come from?
A lot of McDonald's and energy drinks, I think. To be honest, when I was 18 years old, I graduated I just turned 17 and I graduated, so I was pushed ahead in school. So I was pretty young, so I was still at home, and I was trying community college for a little bit, and it wasn't sticking, it wasn't clicking, and I was really frustrated, and I told my mom this, and she goes, listen, if you drop out of school, I'm going to need you to move out and get a job. As long as you're in school, you're welcome to stay here. But she goes, if you drop out, you're going to go through school. It's just going to be the school of hard knocks. And that's something that really stuck out to me. Like, that may be the greatest grain of information anybody's ever given me, because I had this mentality of like, okay, I'm choosing to not go to school, so I better get ready to get my butt handed to me every single day. And that's what it is you wake up and you have 18 Slack notifications, 50 emails, and a bunch of DMs from customers on your personal Instagram, and you're like, okay, let's get to work. There is no option but to keep sprinting, and it's not for the faint of heart, because there's a lot of days, especially having my name attached to the brand, where I'll see, just the other day, there's this guy in England, and the delivery driver didn't deliver his bike on time, and suddenly it was my fault, and he starts ranting about me and tagging me, and I was like, hey man, super happy to help, just need you to know I'm over here in California, you're in England. It's a delivery service that England has because of Brexit. So like, this is not on Super 73, but let me try to help. And he goes, not on Super 73? Excuse me, you're the founder. Everything is on Super 73. And I was like, all right, noted. Like, okay, let's get back to work, because it is, people are gonna be throwing their opinions at you. And I have opinions with brands as well. And sometimes when I'm writing comments on Instagram about brands, I go, you could take this name out and replace it with Super 73, and it's every comment we get. Mm-hmm. And that's really helped me to understand where customers are coming from, where there's this community that wants something so bad that they'll start to get angry about it. And I think having that sort of understanding of like, hey, every day is a grind. It's not a sprint. It's going to be just a long, endless run. Once you get past the depressing part of that, it becomes really exciting and motivating. But it is twofold. I don't want to sugarcoat it. It's a grind. It's really rough.
It's very humbling how in tune you are with the community, because you could see that actually these people are helping you build Super 73 now.
Absolutely.
So can you talk more about community, like how you approach it?
That's fascinating, because there's not a lot of brands today that have that close connection with their community and almost listening to them create the next version. Could you give us some specific examples? In my head, I know some of them, but
absolutely. Well, and I think to address like why there aren't a lot of companies doing that, it's because when you have millions of voices, it's really hard to find the one that speaks for everyone. And so we've had people like Tristan Irvine kind of rise up within the community, create a bit of a following. We recently hired him to add more accountability to our company, to say like, all right, Tristan's now on board. You guys have somebody on the inside now. So like, what can we help you with? And in the past, a lot of that has kind of reflected in the 10-speed setup that we have, that we launched as a direct response to people saying, I want to be able to pedal my bike more efficiently. We built this as a throttle-first platform, so we never really kind of took pedaling into account. I know that's very funny to say about a bike company, but we've always been throttle-first. And so having that piece was a game changer for a lot of people who use the bike in different ways than the majority of our community. Another is obviously full suspension. We went years without full suspension and we fought it. Because it adds a bit of complexity into the design, the engineering, and we wanted to make sure that we were going to be right when we launched it. But we launched the RX as a direct response to customers saying, I want to go further, I want to push my bike harder, and I want it to be more comfortable. The ZX is another one we recently launched. It followed up the Z, which is a very small bike built for Gen Z. That was kind of the idea behind it. And we had so many Gen Xers wanting to ride the bike that it kind of like woke us up and we were like, oh wait, we built this bike for this demographic, but this one's absorbing it, so we need to make the ZX. So the ZX is for those Gen Xers and those older millennials that have families and they want to get around town, and so that even that bike is a response to the community. We're not just pulling off of trends, we're trying to be the ones who are like building those trends.
And you can see, I mean, just to pull a specific example, the 10 speed. I was watching this video where one of your influencers is like, he gave a review and he talked about it, and at the end of the video he literally says, but you can't get it because it was sold out in 1 hour.
Right.
That's crazy.
It's painful. Yeah. So COVID has really complicated things, and we don't like to be constantly sold out. We don't want to be supreme. And that's kind of the case. Is sometimes I'll get from production, they'll say, hey, can I get a campaign around these seats? We have 500 of them landing here on this day. And I'm like, no, because they'll be sold out in 17 minutes. So I'm not going to put together a campaign just to annoy people who did never get a chance to get it. So it's a matter of really like building that foundation that we can actually grow steady production and cycling incoming production on, which if you go out in the bullpen right now, there's a bunch of non-millennials is what we call them. They're people who have more than 15 years experience in the business. We brought them all in 2021 to assist with the supply chain because COVID changed the game so much. It kind of radicalized production to where we were like, oh, okay, a bunch of millennials could get it this far, but we can't go any further. Wow. So we brought in the big guns who sit out there and they just roll their eyes every time I skateboard past them. But they're the ones who are saying like, okay, if you want to have a steady supply chain, I'm going to start booking 3 years out. So what does 2025, 2026 look for us? And that's been really, really cool to kind of see, I'd never thought about 2025, it's 2021. And they're like, no, we got to put our orders in now. And that's what's been really insane is because the demand is shot through the roof, these factories are like, you play by our rules. So we were lucky enough to move production out of China pre-2020, which is really a big part of what kept us alive. If all of our production had been in China, after that shutdown, I don't know where our company would be because of that. So Legrand had the foresight to start to diversify the supply chain, which not a lot of companies are doing because it costs more money. It adds longer wait times, it adds bigger delays, but we're still standing. And that's really, really cool because I don't know if I can say the same thing if we had focused and really kind of put all our eggs in one basket.
I feel like you guys are constantly ahead of the game, and like the thought to get there, you guys have the intention to be around, to stick around.
Yes, I think it's always about, okay, well, we've got this, we're not going to rest on our laurels, what's next? And there's a lot of big e-bike companies in the US who have 3 models, and those are going to be the 3 models for 7 to 10 years. I'm really envious of their profits. I'm really envious of that. But we didn't get into to get profits. We really wanted to build an American legacy company. Very much what Harley Davidson did back after the war was they didn't do things the easy way because it was more about the legacy of the product. And I think that's kind of why we do things so differently. And it does frustrate people sometimes because if we just went the cheapest parts, plastic everything, and went with easier designs that are being made in China, we'd probably have more bikes. And ultimately, though, I think that we would be a flash in the pan. Whereas with Super 73, we have a real chance of becoming like a legacy production.
Wow. And the community actually thanks you for it. And I kind of want to touch back on the community because it is one of your pillars of the company. But that quality, I hear it over and over again from like the people that review your products to influencers. Like they truly love the thought that went into it, into design and the materials. And like not only that, but from a product standpoint, yes, you guys have nailed it. But on a community side, Super 73 is doing a lot more than just activations, or you guys are doing like community rides? Like I'm constantly hearing about these rides. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think owning a Super 73, everybody thinks it kind of starts and ends at having a bike. Like I own an e-bike, but not with Super 73. And we've had, we did a video on a community member named Erin who, she started riding in the pandemic, and she said, when I bought this bike, I had no idea I'd be getting a family. And that is like, it's very heavy-handed, but for me to say, but it's so true, because I have so many friends from my circle that are now friends with some of my other customers, because when they bought this bike, it was like, oh, okay, well, what now? I want to go riding with people. You hop on Facebook, you hop on Instagram, you're plugged in within a couple minutes, and you've got group rides in your area coming up in the next day or two, if not that day already. So we're seeing group rides with 100, 200 riders at a time, just covering the streets of Los Angeles. We had Anderson Silva pop in not too long ago, and he just came in huge energy and didn't call us and tell us he was coming. And I was like, oh, Anderson Silva, hello, good to meet you. What are you doing here? And he was like, I saw 100 of these bikes drive by me in LA, and I came straight down here because I needed to know what was happening. And that is the coolest thing in the world, because that's organic. It's this community finding each other and saying like, oh, we have similar interests, let's ride together. And you start to see it. They kind of form like these little cells. And we have like we have the Latino gang. We have like a Filipino crew. We have a crew out in New York. They all have like matching jackets. So it starts to be these little like clubs that are doing good, and that's kind of a big difference, is because we're such a eco-friendly product. You have these like motorcycle gangs of like saving the environment, which is really funny. So awesome. And I want to lean into that more, kind of highlighting how much good these people are doing. They're doing fundraisers. They're helping each other out. We had a community member come down with an illness recently, and they put together a GoFundMe for him. Like, these are fellow e-bike owners. These aren't like lifelong friends. These are people that they met riding e-bikes, and that's really cool to see that. And that's why we like really insist on them coming through here, spending time with them, understanding what their needs are. I know so many of them by name. So many of them now work here, and that's because if we don't have the community, there's no point in doing this. We might as well just go sell in Walmart and be done and make a bunch of money, because that's kind of one angle you can go with your company. But the other one, I think, has a much more meaningful impact on not only our generation, but even how we think about transportation in the US.
The intention that you put into it is, you can tell all the way through. And there are very few brands that have that kind of affinity, like immediate. I know one because I drive a Jeep, but they have a Jeep Wave, and then it's incredible that you've created this in only a matter of it's a very short time, and to create that much level of close-knit community is phenomenal.
I mean, Jeep is on our in every deck I've ever seen of what brands do you identify with, Jeep is in there, because it's very true. It's this community of people that are like-minded and they're doing one thing, whether it's climbing rocks or riding down PCH. They're doing one thing together, and it kind of creates this bit of fraternity. And a lot of comments online, I'll go on the e-bike forums occasionally just to make myself mad, and a lot of comments are like, yeah, they're just pulling parts out of China and slapping them together, they're charging you a premium, and it's so funny because I'm like, I wish I could show you our CADs. I wish I could show you that I have designers and engineers sitting 50 feet away from us right now, literally CADing up these pieces that have never existed before, making them themselves, and they're all in VR now, and so you go back there and it's a bunch of designers in VR, and they're just doing this all day long. Wow. And then at the end of the day, they print out what they're working on, and you're like, that is so unbelievable. And I'll take you guys back there after and kind of show you some of what they're up to, but it's this idea of like, it's really easy to pick parts off of a shelf, but by intentionally designing and making this thing, everything from the brand to the brakes, from the ground up, we've realized that there is so much more of a legacy that we can build into that.
So these core values, how do you walk that fine line with running a business? Also, a lot of overhead, cost, profitability, even bringing on investors, and you communicate it really well, but there's a lot of challenges. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's tight. Everything is bootstrapped. Our marketing team is, up until about a year and a half ago, had never spent $1 on an ad. And that's because we didn't have money to spend on ads. We were spending money on building up the systems within. So I had to think a little creatively and get viral with it, which is why there's been so much of a viral presence with Super 73. It's not because I had some magic formula to understanding what viral is. It's because we had no other choice but to make these bikes be seen by people without spending a cent. Wow. And so that's kind of a lot of our core value. It's not one of our pillars, but being thrifty is definitely important around here. So we don't sponsor big events. We don't run TV commercials. We don't spend superfluously. I've never been on anything outside of economy, which I think maybe should change at some point. But it's a matter of like, okay, well, where can we save a few bucks? Let's do that. We're traveling on this trip together. Let's all just get an Airbnb together instead of getting our own hotel rooms. Mm-hmm. And when you have that DNA running through the company, you realize that when you're in the boardroom and you're making these bigger decisions, it's a lot easier to know where you want to spend money because everybody is aligned. And as long as we're all aligned, whether we're going out to throw out a new bike, pitch to investors, kind of change a demographic, as long as we're all aligned with how we want to come across, how we want to spend money, and what we want to achieve, it's very easy to make these things happen, which is why I think we're so quick to bring new products to market. There's obviously delays because of COVID and supply chain, but if we had to, worst comes to worst, I think within 30 days we could launch an entirely new bike that isn't even being designed right now, and that would be, that sort of exercise is really cool to see.
I want to switch gears a little and let's talk about how you had to be viral because you weren't spending the money on, let's say, those ads or those big partnerships. There were a lot of really defining pieces that you've done with influencers and collaborations, and I want to highlight them, but I also want to talk about how did they happen? How did you get connected to them? So
yeah, it's one of my favorite parts to talk about because I feel most confident in my understanding of that kind of side of the marketing world. And I grew up. I always say I was born on YouTube. Like I grew up, and instead of watching TV, it was YouTube, and it was the old vloggers back in the day, and it shaped the way I absorbed content. I never thought about TV shows. I never really thought about, scripted content more than just natural. And so when I started making content for Super 73, it was built on this idea of always wanting to be that. I always was like, I should go be a YouTuber. I should make YouTube videos. And, tried my hand a couple times. A few community members watching are going to definitely know of some of those old videos. And it never really clicked, but it clicked enough to where it got me a lot of good contacts. Vine was big. When Vine came out, I just started making stupid videos of myself, and they started getting some traction. And not massive amounts, but I had about 30,000 followers back on Vine, which got me invited to some cool Vine parties. And I started to experience Hollywood and Hollywood social media, not Hollywood, proper. And so I kind of understood, okay, this is how it works. These are how businesses are run. And I developed some really good friendships with people. Garrett Watts was one of them who was also kind of a bit of a flop on Vine in the early days, and then YouTube hit, and that guy just exploded, and he found his kind of format. So, there's that. There's Jesse Wellens, Casey Neistat. We've recently just got, kind of started chatting with Cody Ko, Noel Miller, and so it's kind of that group that is sort of a bit of a guiding light for us. When we were in a bind, calling out to Jesse and saying, hey, what are your ideas? What do you got? Because we're in kind of a bind here. What are you thinking? How can we get some views quick? And that guy likes a challenge. And so he's like, let's do it. I want to do this. I want to make this, which kind of takes us to the Speeder Bike project, which was one of our first big viral hits. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. There's no secret there. And so Jesse wanted to make a Halloween video like his Silver Surfer one the previous year. And so I thought, I'd love to help you with this. And we kind of found a bunch of different ideas, and it was kind of gravitating away from Super 73. And I was kind of like, let's just try to get it back into bikes. And I said speeder bikes, and the idea kind of flopped. And so I said it again. And over the course of the next hour, I probably said it 12 or 15 times. And then I finally pulled up the video of the speeder bikes and showed him. And I was like, we can make these. We can put them on our bikes. We can put mirrors on the tires like they did in A New Hope. And we could make a whole speeder bike video. He loved it, once I kind of explained the idea behind it. And from then it was just off to the races. He funded that whole project for us out of his own pocket.
Oh, wow.
Because I was like, hey, if we want to make this happen in the next 30 days, we need grunt like designers, grunt makers, people who can get in there, sand fiberglass. So we hired a team. We hired a team from Long Beach to come down, like Long Beach students, to come down and help us build these speeder bikes. And so I vlogged the whole thing, and I was like, hey, this is what we're doing. We're Super 73. We bought a $3,000 panel van that Jesse paid for. And it was, I think it was like $2,700, and it was horrible. No insulation. It was an old delivery van, no air conditioning, horrible power steering. I loaded the speeder bikes in the back and I drove it to New York. And I mean, it was miserable. I had about 2.5 days to get to New York. So I drove the entire time. I slept for a couple hours a night, then back on the road. And doing that project kind of pulled our company to its total limit of just like frustration, exhaustion. We're broke. Like, we got no money in the bank account. So like, what are we doing here? And you know, an old partner didn't really see the value in it even at the time. And so it was kind of us explaining, no, trust me, this is gonna work. This is gonna work. Launch the video explodes. We do the behind the scenes. The behind the scenes video gets about 400,000 views, which kind of grows our YouTube audience. We didn't sell a lot of bikes at that day though, because we didn't put our logos anywhere on the bikes. I was like, I was very against it, sorry. I was very against putting our logos on the bikes because it didn't feel authentic to Star Wars. So we didn't do that. And so as such, a lot of people didn't know it was us. But over the course of the next year, Jesse and Casey Neistat went above and beyond to take care of us. Casey reviewed our S1 bikes. That got 3 million views, something like that. I believe we sold about 200 bikes that day alone that his review dropped. And we start seeing these things happening. Post Malone now wants a bike. And I go up to Jesse and I go, hey, how do we get this to Post Malone? Jesse goes, let's go to Coachella. Jesse gets the whole thing comped. My wrist was covered in VIP bands. By the end of it, we were in Snoop Dogg's house. We were at Post Malone's music video. We were hanging out with Sway Lee. It was unbelievable, and it was wild to be living this life, and then opening my bank account and having $8 or negative $8. It was such a weird sort of like, I think this thing is working, but we're not realizing the results of it just yet. And then we got Will Smith, and Will Smith was probably kind of that moment in time that decided the rest of our fate. And I've let him know multiple times that he was kind of that moment for us. But
how did that connection happen with Will Smith?
So through Casey and Jesse, actually. He has a personal trainer named Aaron, and he's kind of more than just a personal trainer now. It's his go-to. He's in a bunch of his videos. But Aaron hit us up and he's like, hey, I see you guys doing huge things in the YouTube space. Can we get a couple bikes for Will? He's going to Cartagena to film Aladdin. And I was like, yes, and this all was, it was like the night before, it was an email, and it was shady. It was super shady. But I bought a plane ticket and I put 2 bikes, overnighted them to FedEx, and flew out, spent the last of our money getting to Florida to meet Will Smith because he was going from there to Cartagena and he needed the bikes that day. I brought my brother because I just needed somebody I could trust, and so we started assembling the bikes in this hotel in Miami, Florida. We had just gotten in a couple hours before. We woke up the next morning, brought the bikes over to this hotel. Couldn't have been shadier. Like, couldn't have been like more of like, this is probably where I die sort of situation, and I just flew directly into it. We get in the elevator, there's like 6 dudes in suits around us. It was unbelievable levels of security. We go out, we get brought into a hotel room, and I just had this like pit in my stomach of like, did we just make a mistake? And then Will Smith busts through the door. And when he busts in, I go to introduce myself, and he just wraps me up in this hug, and he like picks me up because people are vlogging, so he's like performing for the camera, and I just remember like the world spinning as I'm being like twirled by Will Smith, and it was very, very like, oh, I think this is what it's all been about. I think maybe it's this moment. I got to sit there and tell him the story, kind of like I'm talking to you guys. We just sat there in the hotel room, and he gave us about an hour and a half of his time. It was wild. Told him the whole story, told him where we were at. Again, struggling so badly that could not, like, my card was getting declined at the dollar store. It was that bad. So kind of that, I think all entrepreneurs know that moment where you get some cash and you can't let it go into your bank account because it's already overdrawn, so it's just going to be less overdrawn. So yeah, it was kind of that situation, and I was just talking to Will about it, but not a sob story way, just like, this is where we're at, this is what we want to do. He gets to Cartagena a couple days later, and he sends this message to us that says, hey, I just want to thank you all for trusting me and coming out. I hope this helps. Launches an Instagram video that ends up getting about 15 million views. Just tags us, nothing else, just says @Super73. And he's sitting there doing like kind of wheelies on the bike, and it jumps out into the universe. That saved our company. That video saved our whole company, which is crazy because we were kind of cranking along and it was working a little better. We were not super well funded. We were still paycheck to paycheck as a company. We weren't even getting paychecks. And it was that day that we became a mainstream product. And I cannot tell you how many bikes flew off the shelves, instantly sold out. Next batch inbound, instantly sold out. Wow. All these big publications wanting to play with us, professional teams reaching out, the Rams asking us to come hang out on the field for a game. It was just unbelievable. Overnight, suddenly everybody wants Super 73. I remember sitting down to a meeting, and it was us, the Rams, and Manscaped. And I was like, this is Manscaped. This is a real company. And I was like, we're here. Like, does anybody know why we're here? So it's kind of those moments of realization where you're like, okay, playing this game, this influencer game, it works if you play it authentically. And I think what we see a lot of times are brands who don't. We've all seen those tone-deaf ads that are like super cringy, and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never buying this. We didn't ever want that. So the bike has to fit into the creator's lifestyle. There's been a lot of creators that we don't work with because we think it wouldn't fit into their lifestyle the way that they think it might. So we're happy to get them a bike at a discount or whatever, but we're not going to ever ask for anything in return because it doesn't align with our authentic values. And so we've never paid an influencer for a post. We've never paid for any sort of social campaign. It's always viral and organic because if we stray away from that, we become everybody else. And at that point, you're just seeding product to rich people for the sake of hoping they post it. And it's never been about that. It's about connecting with people who understand what we're doing, who want to stand behind it. Joel McHale's another good one. I was a huge fan of Community for the longest time, and I got to sit down with him and tell our story to him. And now we're at the point where he's sending me videos in the morning saying, Michael, heading out for a ride. Any recommendations? And I'm just like, what? Like, this is crazy. So cool. But it's because that dude lives and breathes Super 73. So much so, he went on Conan and gave us a 2-minute commercial just because he wanted to say thank you for the free bike.
Lithium Cycle.
I have not heard of them. No.
Oh, they're a great company in Tustin. They make a beautiful lithium cycle. It looks like a 1970s. It looks like it has a banana seat. It looks like a 1970s bicycle. Which, yes. So, would you like one? Because if you say.
So it really, you start to see like, okay, there is a formula to it. It's not just throwing bikes against the wall and hoping one of them sticks. It's kind of about understanding what your brand is. You mentioned Jeep. Jeep knows what Jeep is. And Jeep never tries to be anything that's not Jeep. And that's super important. And Super 73 has to do the same thing, where we don't ever try to cross over into somewhere where we're not welcome. Because the minute that happens, the brand starts to deteriorate, and you cannot protect it the way you can when you have creators like Will Smith, Casey Neistat, Post Malone.
So you've been super intentional with all the influencers that you've worked with. That's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, we've had influencers. The Super 73's DMs are out of control. We have to protect that very closely because it's a lot of power for one person to have. We had to vet our social media manager very closely because you are directly communicating with Justin Bieber. You're directly communicating with Sway Lee. Literally. Anybody and every Charlie Day posted, the comedian from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia was writing the other day, and it's just like it's unbelievable. It's really, truly unbelievable. And the reason for that is, I think, because we've been authentic and we can actually add value to somebody's life. We're not, another disposable product. We're something that can allow these people to feel cool, seek adventure, find community, and get outside. And especially in 2020, I think it's been very important, since 2020, giving people a way to get outside safely.
Nice. That was a phenomenal story.
Thanks.
Wow.
It's fun to tell. It still feels very surreal, and we try to be very careful even about telling that story, because it can give a lot of people an idea of, oh, okay, well, I'll just do the same thing. And it's like, it's really, really hard to do in a way that you have to be so calculated and so smart, and you have to say no to things that might be life-changing. A good example, and I'm sure he's fine, for me to talk about it. Logan Paul hit us up a little bit before the event that ended up getting him in a bit of trouble, and he was a little bit on the rocks at the moment. And that was a really hard no. We had to say, like, hey, unfortunately not right now. Like, we're not really in a good spot to be able to do that. And then all of that stuff happened and it kind of unraveled. But all throughout the next couple of years, I kind of kept up with him, and I would let him know, like, hey, hope you're doing well. Been seeing this is going well. Want to try to get you some bikes. And when I said that, he drove down that day, which is insane. I'm at the office on a Sunday just getting some work done, and he pulls up in his G-Wagon and jumps out with cameras blazing, and I go, hey man, would love to show you around, just can't have cameras because we got some kind of private stuff. Puts the camera down, most respectful dude, most respectful influencer I had worked with, bar none. And was like, listen, here's what I'm trying to do. I'm working on my content. I really am changing so many elements of what I'm doing. And in that conversation, I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is somebody that we now need to work with, because I see what he's trying to do and see what he's trying to accomplish. So we were able to get him bikes. And it was kind of that idea of, it's good we didn't get him bikes sooner, because I don't think he would have trashed them and rode him into a pool and it would have been done. But now Logan loves those bikes so much that he has mechanics come up to just give him checkups, like just to make sure that they're operating correctly. And I think that was a good symbol of, like, hey, just because the opportunity is facing you doesn't necessarily mean it's the opportunity you should take. It's okay to say no sometimes.
Wow.
So yeah.
Those are great insights, and I know there's a lot of brands kind of looking at influencers as, hey, this will make my brand, go to the next level. But, hearing from you and just kind of the lessons that you've learned, it's just being more intentional of who you work with. And it's so interesting because that scooter, the speeder, the Star Wars speeder, now that I think back on it, it's like, I saw incredible coverage, but you don't really know it was a Super 73 until they did the behind the scenes stuff. And actually, I knew about that Star Wars video before knowing about Super 73, cool. And they're like, wow, like you did keep it so authentic. And
it's cool to see awesome. People. It's cool to see people put that together, and it happens a lot, especially because I'm in the Star Wars world as well. I'll add it into like a hypercut I'm putting on TikTok, and they're like, oh my gosh, you did that? And it was like, yes, and that was the point, is that it wasn't a Super 73 project. We were helping out some creators that we really admired. We really admired Casey and Jesse. So we were helping them out, knowing there won't be an immediate return, but in the future, they are going to be Team Super 73 so through and through that Casey's texting me saying, hey, do you need investment? Are you in a position where you guys are taking on like angels? Like I've got these people, I want to connect you here. Like, and that's just because we put the horse in front of the cart. We did things correctly. We didn't rush and say, let me cash in on this influencer. It was more about like, let me build a relationship with this creator, and if they're authentic and then they're an actual creator that understands what we're doing, let's open the floodgates and make stuff. But then there's been a lot of times where we've probed and been like, yikes, okay, pull back. Like, we'll get them the bike, but like we're going to leave it at that because Jeep wouldn't do that. And that's kind of the whole thing, is like Super 73 needs to authentically stay in its own lane. And that lane can expand as we get bigger, but we're very cautious of it.
That's incredible. Thanks for sharing. And a lot of brands, they think like influencers are just like a single feature, or they think, hey, if I just pay, they're gonna get me this one video and the video is gonna take off. But it's really investing in these relationships. And from what I'm hearing, it's not just a single video. Yeah, you have a video, but it's what comes after. And even talking about going into investors and introductions to investors, these influencers today, a lot of them are linked to investor groups too.
Yes. I mean, absolutely. You couldn't have said that better. I think, 2010, influencers were stoked to cash in on a brand deal and be done. Now they're thinking a bit more long term. So they're building these relationships with these VCs or these hedge funds or these angels. And a lot of times they are the angels and they have enough money to just do it themselves. And so it's the game has changed a lot. But I will tell you, having that influencer key is vital when you're pitching for fundraising, because some of the most oohs and ahs we got in the pitch rooms were always when we got to the influencer list. We would chart out, and we can't do it anymore because it would be 6 or 7 pages. But in the beginning, we'd chart out all these names and these photos and their amount of followers and saying like, look, they posted for us for free. Go find another brand that can do that. And you just can't. And that's been really cool to kind of step back and look at, is there just isn't another brand that gets that kind of authentic, organic reach without having to pay any money. Again, we have never paid for a post, and as long as I'm here, we never will. Wow. Because once you pay for a post, you open the floodgates of saying like, okay, well now I can be bought. And now like my product cannot stand on its own. And we're lucky enough to have a really engaging product. I'm not stupid. I know that we have a very cool product and I'm lucky to have that. But even if you're selling razors, it's the same thing. You find that influencer that will authentically push what you're doing. And sometimes they only have 10,000 followers. And that's kind of a big secret. Tristan, our community member, he built his following based on Super 73, and then bought his first house based on the affiliate program money he earned by moving so many bikes. Nobody has moved the number he's moved because he authentically believes in what we're doing, and he's able to communicate that to his audience. And he doesn't have 1 million followers. The dude currently has, I think, 17,000 followers, but nobody moves more bikes than Tristan. And so it kind of helps you understand like, okay, influencers aren't always 3 million follower accounts. You have to find the right influencer. And I think that's a lot of these smaller brands, they're going for these big names and they're spending the money and they're raising money to spend it on an influencer when they could probably sell just as much by sending somebody a little bit of free product saying, hey, I really appreciate what you do. Here's what I do. Is there any interest in doing this? And I'm not talking like somebody on TikTok with 5 million. I'm saying start small. Find somebody who has 10,000 followers that's really into the demographic and really into the world that you want to get into. And you're going to see your company explode so much quicker because it builds this grassroots campaign. Now, it's a long journey, obviously. And looking at that 1 million views isn't as satisfying, because you don't have the big names pushing it, but you can get 20,000 views and 5-10% of them buy your product. That's really solid. So that's kind of what I would suggest to anybody trying to get into the space is stop looking for the unicorns, just start finding the horses, because there's plenty of horses out there and they're going to get the job done really, really well.
What's your framework for working with influencers? Kind of like behind the scenes, like do you use like Instagram, TikTok? Do you use any?
I get them platforms? Off Instagram as fast as possible, because when you're communicating with them, are we talking about like how do we kind of work the deals out?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll normally at this point it's really cool. We're stupid lucky. We open the DMs and we'll just kind of scroll and be like, oh, cool, we need to get the moto market. Here's a moto influencer. Let's just reach out to him. So we'll just hit, hey, it's Michael at Super 73 or whatever. Hey, it's, anybody, shoot me an email here. We'd love to chat. Most of the time we turn it into a phone call because I think it's a lot easier to explain what you're trying to accomplish, not in an email. I will never work with agents and I never work with managers either. That's something that was really hard, but it was a line I had to put up because the minute you start working with managers, money needs to be involved. So there's been a lot of people, creators, who will say, let me connect you with my manager. And I have to very carefully and respectfully say, hey, I'm so sorry, we're not set up to work with managers. If you do feel the need to have us work with your manager, I don't know if we'll be the right fit. Here's a coupon code if you are interested in getting a bike. But a lot of the times it's like, oh, okay, no problem. Like, no problem. Let's just you and I do this thing. And it's bold, man. I mean, it's bold to be talking to somebody with the blue check mark and 10 million followers and be like, hey, I'm not here to talk to your manager. I'm here to talk to you. And that's why we try to get them in person as much as possible, because it really brings them into the story. It brings them into understanding. I get people here as much as I can, because once they see R&D back there, they're like, I'm sold. This is as good as my company now. I want this company. What can I do? And so you build that genuine connection with them. If the manager's involved, you're never going to get anything out of it. And you know, no shade to managers. I know they're necessary, but we choose to not work with them because it would slow our process down so much so that I don't think we'd be able to succeed.
Those are great tips, and thank you for sharing that.
For sure.
But let's switch gears. I want to even take it back to what do you think about this? Like going through the influencers, because I think that's
I mean, next would be the future of Super 73. I mean, obviously you've built a phenomenal team here. You've brought a lot of experience. Yeah. So yeah, what's next for Super 73? Even like making sure you have the proper resources. Like what's the vision for?
Yeah, you know, we are currently an electric bike company, and we're really proud to be an electric bike company, but I don't think that's what we will always be. I think we're going to continue to diversify. We're going to continue to push. You know, we have products coming out next year that cater to markets that we've never even talked about or looked at. And we're talking both ends of the market, every end of the market. We don't want to just be a bike company because I think that we have the creativity, the talent, and the real opportunity to be something more than just a bike company. And we're pushing really hard towards that. So this January at CES, we're going to be unveiling a lot of really cool future stuff that is, I think it's genuinely going to blow people's minds, not just the avid fan. I think it'll be more of a mainstream appreciation for these products we're releasing. And I think that's what you have to do in 2021. Everybody's attention span is really, really short. So you have to keep it fresh. You have to evolve with your customers. So many of your customers says, okay, I've kind of gotten my thrill of the e-bike, time to move on, time to put it down. You have to be ready to meet them where they want to go. And so that's kind of what we're focusing on now is meeting our customers as their needs change, as their interests change, as their family dynamics change. What do those products look like and how can we support them? So that's where we're heading.
So fleshing out that product line, and excited for CES. I just got an email from CES saying, get your tickets now, but I really got to go there.
Yes, we have a booth there, and I'll give you a little teaser on the booth. I think they're actually in a pitch meeting right now about it, and it's kind of one of my obsessions was I thought it would be so cool to make a booth look like it came out of 1980s early Saturday morning cartoons, because nobody at CES is going to be doing that. CES is so buttoned up in all business, so I was like, let's punch CES in the face. Let's make a booth that looks like Transformers meets G.I. Joes meets A-Team. I'm going to have cosplayers there in full suits, and it's going to match everything that we're doing with the products, which is really cool and weird. We're about to get, now that we kind of have our bones set up and we're growing, we're getting weird, and that's what we want to keep doing. Is the original bike was so weird, and we want to kind of keep that energy going. So, you know, with some of the new stuff we're working on, it's very much more catered towards what makes us happy. And I think that's always been such a point of our success is, okay, well, what do we want to do? Because what we want to do, other people are probably wanting too, so let's just figure it out. So I'm talking, you know, in the instruction manuals, I'm working on getting, this is the first time we've talked about it publicly, but I'm working on getting like comic book panels written in there that are kind of teach you how to use the bike,
that's
but
cool.
in as a comic book. So your instruction manual is going to be a comic book now. So it's actually something you want, because I throw every instruction manual out the door as soon as I get it. What if it was something that you could actually put on your table and be stoked to have and to show people? Wow. And so even in the tiny details like that, you know, the box packaging, as a joke, we put a 3D model underneath all the packaging of the accessories of a future hover bike. And there's a stamp on it that says, if leaked, fire Michael. And so that's always lived at the bottom of our packaging, and it's very rare that people notice, because normally you just open the package and throw it away. But if you dig to the bottom, you'll actually find that, and those are things we want to kind of focus on more as well. So kind of having that sort of childlike wonder and ability to just make weird stuff that doesn't necessarily need to have a purpose. We had a bottle opener and a cup holder on the original bike. There was no reason we should have had those things, but we wanted them on, so we did it. And so we're going to continue doing that as we continue to grow, and I think that's attracted a lot of investors who are kind of looking for that same sort of behavior out of a company.
Nice. So you've come a long way from your Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign. How do you see investors now? And I'm guessing they're reaching out to you, or you?
Yes, we're the prettiest girl at the bar right now, which is really nice, because it's kind of a new feeling. The first time we raised funding, I think we pitched 300 times, and people were not interested. They wanted to meet us. They wanted to see the product. We realized every single week we're driving up to Palo Alto, and these investors are stoked, and they're riding the bikes. And these pitches are going 2 or 3 hours long because everybody that works there comes out to ride the bikes. And then they pass on us. And it was the weirdest sort of like, it's like having an amazing first date and then getting ghosted. And you're like, well, okay, well, what was it? Like, what didn't you like? And we kind of learned that none of them wanted to take the risk. There was no reason that they should invest in anything that isn't rideshare kick scooters, because that was kind of the big craze in 2016. And so, it was really, really tough. And then Tiger Global reached out to us. They're a New York, investor. Didn't even want to hear a pitch.
Wow.
Wanted to just meet us. As soon as he met us, the check was written. There was no pitch that we gave. He knew about the company. He knew what he wanted. He said, I just wanted to make sure I liked the founders and I love you guys, so let's go. So it was our first run of funding, and it was weird because we had been taught all these lessons about how it's supposed to go, and all of them went completely south. And then the one that should have made no sense, the guy's like, yeah, come to New York on Monday. Meet me at 4:00, and by 4:10 there was a deal signed, and that was like, it doesn't happen. Yeah, it doesn't happen.
How did that connection happen? Because Tiger Global, I mean, they're a big deal.
I believe it was just kind of like a mutual, somebody who worked somewhere who knew someone who was like, hey, I think I can get this in front of them. We have agencies that help, and the agency recently found our Series B funding. But Tiger Global was kind of like our influencers, just really organic. And yeah, it was a quick deal, very quick deal. And so from then on, when we went to Series B funding, we had kind of learned a lot. So we began to pitch through COVID digitally, like over Zoom. And it was kind of the same idea, a lot of excitement, a lot of interest, and we had a proven track record. But people were still very nervous, especially in COVID, to fund a company completely reliant on overseas transportation. Like, we had to get our products from Taiwan and Asia over to the US, and that was very nerve-wracking for people. And then Larry from Volition came along. And Larry is a total renegade. He's kind of become famous for the pet food company. What's the subscription pet
Chewy?
food? What's that?
Chewy?
Yeah, Chewy. Yeah. Sorry. So yeah, Larry was instrumental in getting Chewy to the level it's gotten to, blowing it up. He's now on the board of directors, I believe, for GameStop. So the guy just has his finger on the pulse. And he actually flew out here. And so that was very tricky in 2020, figuring out, okay, he's gonna fly out here this day, he's gonna do his COVID test, he's gonna quarantine for 3 days, kind of make sure he's all good. But he was so adamant about, and it was later in 2020, but he was so adamant about meeting us and being here. And as soon as we met him, we chatted, he said, I knew there was magic in this building, I needed to feel it for myself. And that was really cool to hear him say, because it was the first time somebody had talked about like magic, because everybody just wants to see numbers and revenue and see where you're going. But Larry was like, no, I needed to see the magic because there's something weird about this group of people. And he was right. I mean, he sat with me, and I have this corkboard on my wall for the longest time. I took it down and turned it into a binder, but it's fan letters. It's fan mail. It's a giant binder now. It's about this thick of fan letters, both about Super 73 and about what I do on the side. And he looked over at it and he goes, Michael, in all my years, I've never seen anything like this. And I was like, that's what this whole company is based on. Mm-hmm. This whole company is based on interaction with people who care enough to sit down and write a letter. And we have corkboards here with, fan letters saying thank you so much. And I think it's because it's so personal. What we're doing is so personal. And Larry saw that and he understood it. And he's like, look, I don't care what product you guys launch. You already have that key ingredient. So I just want to jump in with you guys. Whatever you launch, like, let's launch it. But it's not about the bikes. It's about the team that's making the bikes. And that's always been very kind of central here at Super 73, is to be a team that can launch any product. And that kind of takes it back to the old Kickstarter days of launching product after product, trying to figure out what would work. It's in our DNA to kind of do that. And so it's more about the team of us here being able to successfully launch things, that rather than relying on a product to be the success.
Incredible. So after pitching all these, investors, and I know you said that you kind of did it the formulaic way. Were there any tips that you were like, this needs to happen before, or?
Yeah, I'll be kind of honest. We held a lot of our cards really close to our chest, even in investment meetings, where I was, we'd kind of finish the meeting and they wouldn't be wowed, and we were all kind of thinking like maybe we should have shown them like what's coming up. Maybe we should have talked to them about where we want to go. And we just constantly held ourselves back. And we were like, no, we can't expose too fast because somebody's going to copy us. Somebody's going to knock it off. These investors are interviewing 50 versions of us every single week. So like if we give them an idea, they can just give it to somebody else. And then with Tiger, we were like, I remember chatting with LeGrand and Aaron, and we were like, we could just show our hand, just put the whole hand down on the table. So we added a new slide, and that was one of the slides that really blew him away. And he was like, I had no idea. Why hadn't you talked about this? And we were like, well, because we were keeping it a secret. And he's like, but how am I supposed to know to invest in you if you're keeping your biggest thing a secret? And it kind of, is a testament to trust. And it's dangerous and it's risky. And I'm not telling everybody out there to go expose their entire playbook to the first investor that shows interest. But there is something that I think is functional and allows for success when you trust a little bit and you say, you know what? Check this out. And if you steal this idea, it's going to be harder for me to succeed, but I'm going to do it anyways. And if you have that confidence to show them your hand, at least from personal experience that we've been through, I've probably sat through 500, 600 pitches at this point. A lot, guys, too many. Once you have the ability to show your hand, you'll see that whole conversation shifts. They're investing in the people. They're not investing in the product, it's the team. Because tomorrow the product may have to change, and if you don't have the team there that can keep that product moving forward, then your product's gonna fall. And so focus on the team, focus on your big ideas. Don't be afraid to be a little used car salesman about it. I was definitely insulted at one point early in my career as having used car salesman energy. And I was like really resented that till I was like, oh, okay, I think I understand. It's about selling a dream. And sometimes the dream is trash. And sometimes it doesn't have a right to be sold the way it's sold. But if you can sell that and say, no, look, there's something good here. There's something valuable here. This thing still has 20,000 miles in it. Then let's go. Let's get that car, let's sell that car, and let's take it as far as we can take it, because it's just a step on our journey. And so I think, the idea of being a used car salesman, as much as I think I've grown out of that phase, it is important. It's important to be able to sell something that might not be so appealing to other people, because the right person's going to understand, and they're going to be a great partner.
Oh, those are good tips.
Cool.
Super good. Wow.
Cool. Yeah, and I guess I can talk a bit about this too. We're currently ramping up for Series C funding. And by ramping up, I just mean talking about it amongst ourselves. Mm-hmm. We already have one of the biggest investment firms in all of North America saying like, please don't pitch to anybody. We missed the last round and we have to get this round. So it's become, once you have that momentum, it becomes very, very easy to achieve your dreams because you've already sold it one time, and now once it's sold, everybody wants to buy it. It's the truth. As soon as it's sold out, that's when all the interest arises. And much like our bikes, much like Supreme, the same thing with investing. Once you prove that this thing works, everybody lines up to be a part of it. So now it's more about like selecting the right one rather than selecting the only one that'll join. So it's interesting how much it changes, but it's been fun.
Incredible.
Anything you want to close with? Any kind of words of wisdom to any would-be entrepreneurs or any companies out there looking to become the next?
Yeah, I think if you're really trying to make a run at something more than just a turn and burn drop ship product, you got to be okay to not be okay for a long time. There's seasons where I'm just so exhausted and so mentally drained and so checked out, and that's all right. It's okay to have those seasons. You can't expect to wake up and have Gary Vee energy every single day. It just is, it's impossible. Don't ever compare yourself to an entrepreneur who has succeeded through content, because it's one in a billion, And so hold yourself to a lower standard of being okay, because it's a grind. And like my mom said, if you're gonna skip school or you're gonna kind of go out on your own, you're not gonna be a part of somebody else's system, get ready to get beat up, because it's gonna happen. But if you can withstand that beating, the joy and the success and the things that you get to do. I mean, it wasn't that long ago I was making pizzas at Costco. And now, you know, for a season there, Costco was carrying Super 73s. And that's just insane. And that's kind of a sort of a testament to, there should have been 2-3 dozen times that we should have shut the company down. We were out of money. And then we just kept holding it together. We kept bringing it, everything we could do for it, even down to like, there were moments where we were like, should we ask our parents if they can like spare anything to like invest? It's like that sort of mentality of like, you have exhausted every single option. That's the way to really succeed, because the one who wins is the one who doesn't stop running.
Those are great pizzas though, Costco pizza.
I think, honestly, I really think it's some of my best work. I really enjoy Super 73, but making that perfect pizza with the crispy crust, like you can't, there's nothing that brings you that level of joy.
And I'm on the other side that absolutely loves Costco pizza, so I understand.
I had it every single morning at 10 a.m. and I actually quit, not because Super 73 exploded. I quit because I got electrocuted by the pizza display, and I was in my apron and my hairnet, and I was stuck to the display, and at 240 volts, like just pulsing through my body.
Oh my God.
It like blew out a bunch of my blood vessels. Oh. It was like really bad, and I smile now because the thought of dying in an apron and a hairnet is some sort of weird alternate reality. But I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, my mom's gonna have to come identify me, and I'm gonna be wearing an apron and a hairnet, and that's my legacy. And so I quit, and that's what led me to find Aaron and start Super 73. Wow. But it was at such a funny kind of point in my life that I was literally shocked into like waking up, and then I started an electric bike company, which is funny. So I just channeled that electricity right into right into a product. I was like, it's got to have electricity, obviously.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so it's a journey, and you never know where it's going to take you. So even if you are working at Costco or fast food, like it's a step. I mean, and I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't have the patience I have today if it weren't for those previous steps. So it's okay to be okay with where you're at. Don't try to be an overnight success, because overnight successes, if they accomplish anything, it becomes very quickly they burn out, and very quickly it's a flash in the pan. So it's better to be kind of a steady light rather than the one that's too bright in the beginning.
Thank you, Michael.
Cool.
Great
Thank
insights.
you guys. Yeah, this was fun. Thanks for chatting with me. I had a blast.